Hi friends, welcome back to Beyond Game Day. Sorry it's been a minute. I know. 'Tis the season. What can I tell ya? Today we are catching up with Miss Sally Brown, the beautiful wife of Mack Brown, the head coach at the University of North Carolina. So let's just jump right in and get right to it. Here we go. I know what I've read. I know what we've talked about, our relationship of knowing, but tell me how you met Mack and how did that, tell me about your journey, I guess is really what I'm wanting to know, like from beginning to end.
All right. Well, we met on a surprise blind date. It was a surprise because I had no idea it was a blind date. It was a couple people in Chapel Hill tried to fix us up, and I was like, why would I go out with a football coach? I don't like sports. I've never been to a game. Doesn't make any sense. And so one particular friend was persistent. In fact, he was a sports journalist, and he came in to call me at work, and he goes, a bunch of us are going to meet down at Squids after work. If you want to come and join us. And I'm thinking, sure, sounds fun. 20 people. Sure. I show up, it's just me.
No.
So that was our first date. And then we have actually been together ever since then.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you, just because I'm not certain we're not hearing this in the background, we record this when I'm in the suite, and we've got music testing today because we have a home game this weekend. So they're doing all that. So there's no telling what we might have in the background. Okay. Anyway, so if you hear, Snoop Dogg jumping in, you know what's happening. Okay. Okay. So it was a surprise. Hello. Mm-hmm. Guess what?
Yeah.
So what did it look like? So y'all met when you were in Chapel Hill, and then where did you go?
Well, we stayed in Chapel Hill. So he coached there for 10 years, and I think I was there for 4 of those. And then we went to Texas. And then we coached there for 16 years. Then He did ESPN for 4 years. And then we're back at Carolina. This is our 4th year here.
Okay.
A lot of years.
So this is just his second stop in Chapel Hill? Then.
Yes.
Okay. Did it feel like you were going home a little bit?
A little bit. It felt like waking up from a coma of 20 years because everybody's still the same. People are all there. They're just 20 years older, but nothing else. It's a small town. So nothing else really changed. Like maybe one house got painted a different color and you would notice that because it's a small town.
Right.
But yeah, it did feel a bit like going home.
Do you remember when we first met?
Oh gosh, it's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yes, I do actually. I think Gus was coaching high school.
Yes.
You came with him and you brought 4 recruits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly right. And I didn't think you'd remember that. In fact, I told them, I said, I don't think she'll remember when we first met. But yeah. So I was admiring you from afar long time ago because we were before we got into the college ranks. And it has been, it's definitely a different beast.
Yeah. Right.
But so the time in Texas, when you moved from, I guess, had you always lived in Chapel Hill?
No, I grew up in San Francisco.
You grew up in, so what took you to Chapel Hill?
My first husband was a professor there.
Okay. So you moved because of a job, and then life happened, and then you met this precious Mack Brown, man with all of his fun. Yes. And then he moves you to Texas, and you'll have the ride of your life, that many ups and downs and all the things. And you had some pretty glorious high notes and lots of fun there. Anything that just sticks out besides?
So much. Texas is such a state of its own. And, you can't prepare for that. You can't prepare for the scale of Texas football. When I first got there, Coach Darryl Royal's wife, Edith, just befriended me and just mentored me and was so wonderful. But the first thing she said to me is, she goes, Texas football is a roller coaster. You're going to ride it up and you're going to ride it down, and you're going to ride it up and you're going to ride it down. And I always remember that and kept that in the back of my mind. That is what it is. It's just, it's a roller coaster.
Right.
And might as well have fun with it. But there were so many things outside of football that Texas had to offer, Austin had to offer, like highlights of my life. One of the best moments of my life was I got to ride my horse through downtown Houston for the Houston Rodeo. And that was, who gets to do that? That was super cool. Wow. I met princes and I met presidents, and you just meet so many interesting people, and there's, so much great music in Austin. So outside of football, everything in Austin is absolutely fun and awesome.
Yeah, that is your love of horses. I was going to mention that later, but tell us, do you have horses now?
Well, they're all still in Austin because
Oh,
I know I can't move from here. I've tried. And because they, were born and lived there their whole lives and they've always been fed, they can't be put out on pasture
right.
here because they just eat so much. They came here the first time I brought them all. They got gout and that doesn't work. So they're still there. So I visit them.
Yeah. Bless it. Because I know that's a big filler of a time for you. That's a hobby that's kind of your thing.
Right.
I mean, I'm guessing Matt gets involved, but in the football world, not a ton of time to go mess with the horses. The more I'm involved, the more, it's going to be healthy for our relationship, I guess.
Right.
And, we're talking to coaches' wives, and that's one of the things that keeps coming up as a theme a little bit, is that it's not about you not having your own life, because you do. It's, the beautiful part that I don't know if a lot of people realize is that you were a very successful businesswoman in and of your own right. You didn't really, it wasn't as if you were just sitting around waiting on Mac to tell you when to come up and hang out with him. It was like, if I can work you into my busy schedule, honey, I'll be there kind of thing. So tell us about what your professional role and what that looked like for you as a businesswoman.
Well, I was a developer, so I built neighborhoods. So basically, I did the infrastructure, did the streets, the gutters, all the fun things, the non-glamorous parts of neighborhoods.
Right.
And it was, it's pretty time consuming, and especially a lot of evening work, just because clients can't meet with you usually during the day. So we both had really busy schedules. When I moved to Texas, though, I stopped doing residential development, and I just did a lot of redoing homes and ranches. And so that I had a lot more of my own time at that point,
right,
which helped a lot. But, I know that you're the same way, but the only way you're going to have a really great marriage and coaching is if you bring your family to there, right, because they don't have time to come home. And so like every Thursday night, I took the kids in to the office and we all ate dinner together. You have to do that kind of thing in recruiting, because you meet the families and the players so much better once you've met their families and their girlfriends and But I see it like as a great Netflix series. Like each family has their own like really fascinating, crazy stuff. And so I just kind of view it that way. It's like, I don't have to really turn on TV. I've got it coming to me. Sorry about my dogs.
That's okay. We love the dogs. What are your dogs' names?
River and Riggs.
Okay. And those names came from?
Well, River came because he was born in a place called River Lab, and Riggs was from Friday Night Lights, Riggins.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, it all ties back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A good old Texas high school football. Yeah,
yeah. Tell you that.
Growing up in Arkansas, it's funny because we saw Texas football, and guess it had a very seriously successful career, and I always remind him of this whenever he starts feeling like he's a little bit too much. There was a school that was open one year, and Gus could not even get an interview at that point, and had gone multiple state championships and, running the biggest school in the state. But when it came to Texas, it was a whole nother beast. So,
I mean, you see it like in the college ranks when they promote a high school coach. I mean, it's such a huge deal. Jeff Traylor. I mean, such a story, Joey McGuire going to Texas Tech. Right. I mean, they celebrate their high school coaches so much that when they get a college job, it is a big to-do.
I mean, it's kind of, in Texas, you've got a lot of different colleges that are competing to be the top dog. But at the end of the day, Texas is its own entity. I know. Yeah. I mean, but so Mac has a successful run, does great big things, wins national championships. The big USC game, that sticks out in everybody's mind, I'm sure. And Vince making all those great runs, and just the kind of quarterback that Gus loves to have and had one himself. And those, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to watch them run over people and act like there's nothing to it. But tell me that year, what was the highest high of that year?
Of course, it was a fun year. The highest high was we had such great guys on that team, and guys that I still stay in touch with weekly. They were amazing kids, and they were very much a player-led team. Vince, of course, was Vince. He was remarkable. Selvin Young, great running back, so much fun, so much life. And I think on our defense, I'm not sure it's all of them, but maybe all of them went into the NFL after that year. I mean, they were amazing. So talented. So we had a good run.
And who was your defensive coordinator then?
Gene Chiswick.
I knew that. I knew the answer. I just wanted you to say it.
Yes. And here's one I remember. We had played. I'm not sure who we were playing at home, but after the game, we'd won, and all the kids are in the locker room. We're all in there, celebrating. Which, by the way, is the most fun part of being involved in college football is the locker room after a win. So fun.
I have never done that. I'm gonna do that this week.
Yeah,
I'm gonna show myself up.
My absolute favorite.
See, I'm always learning, Sally. Always learning. Oh, that's awesome.
So after a game, we're in the locker room. We're at halfway in the season. I think USC is number 1 and we're number 2 the entire season. And USC is getting beat, I think, maybe by Notre Dame. I'm not sure who they're playing. I think it was Notre Dame. But anyway, the kids were in there just cheering for USC because they did not want them to lose. They wanted them to win because they wanted to beat them.
Yes.
And the very last play of that game in the locker room, there was the Bush push where one of the players pushed Reggie Bush into the end zone and they won. And our kids were so excited, and I love that about
to be
that
the
team.
Best. You got to play the best. You got to want it. Yes.
Really wanted USC.
Yeah.
USC had won the 2 years before.
Yeah.
The championship. So they had won they'd had 2 straight winning national championships. And so that part was fun. And then the other memory of that year before our last game was the Heisman. Vince was up for the Heisman and he didn't win. Reggie won that year, Reggie Bush. And so Matt Leinart won the year before, Reggie Bush that year, who were both going to play against, and Vince lost. And we're all in the meeting room watching because I didn't go to New York that year. So we're watching this and the players are all they're so stunned. Vince calls and gets on a speakerphone and he goes, all he said is game on.
That's right. Let's do this.
We're like, okay. He's not going to let Reggie beat him.
Oh, not twice for sure. No, I hear you. Okay, so what was the absolute worst thing about that year?
Vince losing the Heisman. We had a tough game against A&M that year. It was interesting where they had a tough year. I think they were 4-7 or something. They were not having a good year. Really unusual for them because they're usually very, very good. And we go into play and, we're on a roll and we're behind at halftime. And that was oh my gosh, here we go. That's not good. So that was a tough part of that year. But, again, the pressure of winning every single game by enough points that you get to stay number 2. Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, for sure. And we had one of those as well against Alabama. We were down and it was big. You go into halftime and you're losing big time and all of a sudden, but it's interesting to see those kind of players that come in and they're like, I refuse it. I'm going to win this game. And those are usually the teams that make it because they really have somebody that's leading them on the field, not just on the sidelines.
It can't be on the sidelines. And, and we all know you can't win it all without a great quarterback.
No, can't. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to, it is hard. So is there anything during that time that I think one of the things that, let me say it this way, Gus and I see there is so much more to the season of winning. And as you win, kind of in the first times that you're doing it, you don't really appreciate as you're going. It's kind of like the stress just builds each week that you've got to make this be more and better and bigger. And even when he was in high school, he said, I just don't take the time to enjoy the fact that we're undefeated and we're doing something. Yeah. And, it's hard to have undefeated seasons. It's hard to make that happen.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Very rare. And so as a wife who's walked through it, is there anything that just in the journey, is there any advice you have?
I don't know that you can have advice for it, because I think you're right. The more you win, the more pressure there is.
Right.
And I remember another wife who was at a school and they hadn't had great success with that year. They were having a great year. And they were usually like a 7-8 win school. And she called me. She's like, this is awful. Like, we keep winning. And I'm like, no, that's good. But she's like, the pressure is so high now.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. I don't know that you can not feel that pressure.
Right.
You know, I can say, don't read anything, don't listen to anybody. But even when you do that, you have friends that go, oh, I can't believe it. So-and-so said this and this and this, you know, just
right.
It is just there.
Yeah. That whole staying off social media, staying out of the newspapers, which I think, you know, when we first got started, it was so much better because message boards had just started kind of really picking up steam, and Facebook was only for the the kids. You had to be a certain young age for all of that to work. It's gotten so intense that it is one of those things that I tell them, it does not matter if the younger wives that ask questions or whatever, I'm always like, if you can stay away from hearing the positive or the negative, because it truly becomes you know, I hate to quote.
I remember Coach Dietzel. Remember Coach Dietzel told us one time, a long time ago, that he, at the end of his career, he stacked newspapers, because that's back in his day. And he said there were equal number of positives and equal number of negatives. So you just can't really believe either one of them.
Right.
And, you know, and truly, who gets on a message board to be positive? No one.
No one.
Ever.
You are so right.
No, I mean, nobody goes, oh, I think I'll get on a message board and say something nice.
Yeah. Like, that's not their goal. It's not their dream. Oh my goodness. So you make it all the way through, highs and lows and all the things. And then all of a sudden, Mack decides it's time, and y'all ride off in the sunset, happily or not. It doesn't really matter. You do. And you said to me when he went back, it was a little bit, which you have been quoted, that it was up to you, you know, kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I have a couple other friends. We have a couple other friends whose husbands have also been in that place. And it's like, they're hard to deal with when they're at home. And it's just not quite like enough for them to just talk about. But how great was that for you? I mean, did you enjoy the whole just talking time when he was just doing it?
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. You know, when we left Texas, I remember saying to him, you know, 16 years in one place, it's 4 presidential terms. It's too much. You know, you just can't stay someplace that long. And you hate that because you want to be loyal.
Right.
But Spike Dykes once said, you know, you lose 10% of your support every year. And I was at Tech for 13 years. You do the math.
Yeah.
And it's true. You know, you really can't stay, because you have the same stories and it just doesn't work. So when he was doing ESPN, it was awesome. You know, I stayed in Austin most of the time, and, you know, he'd be doing his thing and he enjoyed that. And so he stayed, you know, really engaged. And then you had all spring off, which, you know, is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But it was time to go back for us. I mean, we needed that time away, but I could tell that he needed a team. You know, he needed to mentor young kids, because that's what he does and what he loves to do. So it was time for us.
Well, and I've told Gus that if at any point you ever know in your heart that it's time, be willing to step away, because it can be such a grind.
Yes.
But on the other side of it, that purpose and calling doesn't just go away. And it's hard to just shut that down, especially in the deepest, you know, part of your core and your being, because that is it's definitely not your whole identity. You are who you are, but doing that there's something so beautiful about watching. It gives life. I just think it keeps you moving, and it's beautiful. So kudos to you that you let him go back, or that you made him go back, whichever way you want to say.
Not me. But, you know, and it's also, you know, how in coaching, like, you don't get weeks to think about things. Like, should I go back into it? You know, it's like they call you one day and they're like, do you want to do this? And okay. The press conference 3:30 tomorrow. Like,
exactly. And let's do this. Was it a big transition after being out a little while, coming back? Had football changed? Had the business side changed?
Well, I mean, yes, in a sense. I mean, certainly now with the COVID year, the transfer portal, NIL, all of that's changed everything about football, in good and bad ways. But
I do feel like more has changed in the past 3
2
years,
years,
two to three
sure.
years, than in probably 15 before.
I agree with that.
I mean, it has just shifted, and I feel like it's constantly in that what is happening. And probably
you watch games now, and it's like, and he transferred from so and so, and he transferred from so and so, and and we played a game 2 weeks ago where the quarterback was 25 years old. Yeah. And we played him in 2 other schools. Yeah. We played him when he was at Clemson, played him when he was at Duke, and then we played him again. I'm like, oh my God, like how can this kid be here? The 8th year.
I know that that extra COVID year has kind of thrown everything into a different.
It's been good for some schools.
It's
for sure,
been really good, and it's good for some of the kids because the COVID year was a hard. I mean, they missed. We only played the 10 games, and some of them not till the spring, and it messed a lot of things up. So definitely an issue there. But what were your expectations when you went back into coaching? And, did you set any guidelines and any, I know I've said to guests when we left Auburn, not by our choice, but we left Auburn and got to a place, this came along and I just said, we're not doing this the same way. There's going to be a few things that are going to change. And there are some pieces of it that change just by the dynamic of the place that you live, that you were living in bigger city in Austin, and this is small town, and we did just the opposite. So just in that piece of it, it's already different. Yeah. But inside our 4 walls, there were also a couple of stipulations, things that I was like, I need you to pay attention to, and let's not make that mistake of sliding back into that again. Is there anything for y'all that came across that way, or that you felt like you needed to?
Well, he promised me that he wasn't going to take the losses as hard as he had, and he totally lied about that. Yes, he does. I knew going in that it was going to be rough because they had won at North Carolina. They had won 2 games and 3 games the 2 years before us. So I knew the team wasn't, to the standard you'd hope.
Right.
It was. I knew that was going to be a struggle. And we came in and it was, they did have good players. It just, something was off, how you can have that happen. And so, we won enough to go to bowl games and that's good.
And how'd that bowl game turn out? That first bowl game?
Good. It was good.
Did anybody show love to you? Because I think that was there a game ball given to Miss Sally?
Oh yes, I got the game ball for that.
And that's right. I think that I'm going to be holding my guys accountable. It's bad when you're having to ask for the award, but I'm thinking, why didn't I get one?
I know I've got several game balls.
Look at you. Is there anything that you would tell young wives that they need to absolutely be prepared for?
I would tell them to embrace the situation, not complain. The wives that complain about their husbands are gone too long. I say, what if he was in the military? He'd be gone for months at a time. He's not. He comes home at night. He's not, people may say bad things about him. He's not a police officer. You're not worried he's going to get shot when he goes to work. It's all good. Right. And just embrace the team and the players. That's what's going to be fun about it. I can't imagine being a coach's wife and being away from that part of the team part of it.
Right.
Then that would just feel so, I would be getting nothing back. So, I love that part. I either eat lunch or dinner every day over there with the guys. And because, I think, Kristi, this, but guys between that age, they talk when they're eating. They won't talk to you if it's just you sit down next to them when they're not eating, but we'll give them a meal and they'll just chat. You learn everything, way too much probably.
Right.
But that's fun. It's fun for me. So I would just tell them to get involved, get to know everybody there.
Anytime we had them to the house, and guess, and I have this rule. He's not allowed to talk football when they come to the house. And when they're in the house and they're having conversation, it's amazing how much you don't have to ask. They just 1 or 2 little prompts and they will tell you what you need to know. And sometimes without realizing that they're telling you what you need to know. Oh yeah. It's the truth. Embracing seems to be a theme that we keep hearing. And I truly I think that's the part of it, that we get a choice about being negative and frustrated and mad about it. I mean, Gus and I talked about it the first podcast. It is truly, that was the marker for me. It was the day that I went, you know what, I've got to make more of this be okay in my life. Mm-hmm. And once you start embracing the kids and embracing the life of, it changes, and you start to have fun and enjoy it rather than dreading and, being miserable about it. Because
and I mean, think about the people you get to meet, because of the position your husband's in. That's, it's fascinating, all the, relationships you get to form. I mean, we get good parking spaces, great places to watch games. I mean, there's so much positive to it that you just have to enjoy that part.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would tell them absolutely don't do?
You have to learn when you're young that your friends are going to want to know things, and you just can't. You can't relay. Your very bestest friend who would never tell a soul is going to tell a soul. So you just have to really learn to be very, very tight-lipped.
Right.
About what happens in football.
Right. And, that was the case when we were in high school as well. It was like there were people in town that just wanted to know. They just want to be in the know. And while you want to have a safe space to, vent and puke it out.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is hard.
Yeah.
Very, very hard.
That's when I would need to call you, or need to call another head coach's wife who understands the role.
Right.
This was really fun years ago when the Barnetts were at Colorado. After each game, Mary would call me and we would get like the articles out and read, my husband is so stupid, he da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she'd read, my husband is so stupid, and we just laugh on Sundays. I mean, those are the only people who are ever going to understand that situation.
It is the truth. And that's what I keep saying. No one really gets the life until they're in the life. And that it's not that we're anything special. It's just that it's that unique. That's the issue. Best and the worst of coaching, period. Not just a particular season or anything like that. And I feel like you're going to say the best would be being with the kids. But what would it be for you?
Yeah, for sure, it's relationships. It's relationships with the players, and it's so heartwarming. Every Mother's Day, I get so many calls from over the years of players, and that's very heartwarming. And it's the relationships you have with staff, all the other coaches' wives on your staffs for years. I mean, I still talk to Julie Applewhite before every season. Majors at South Alabama now. And she texted me during the UCLA game, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, so there's a lot of the people that Arthur and Talitha Johnson are now at Temple, they stopped through because they were playing Duke and got to see them. So all of those relationships are definitely the best because you have such a community built in, across the country, which is so fun. The worst, losing. I tell Mack this all the time, and I really believe this for all coaches. Like, this is the best job in the world. I love recruiting. I love the players. I like the relationships. I like everything, but I hate the games. I think all of us wives hate the games. They're not fun. We're not tailgating. We're sitting there stressed out. We're recruiting before, and usually we've got recruits next Sunday morning at our house early. And the games are stressful.
They are.
So
they are.
If we didn't play the games, I would think this would be the best life ever.
And I want so often to tell people, because, we have people that want to come and support and this, that, and the other. And especially when you're hosting officials and they're coming to your home, and it's that pressure of win or lose, you got to show up. I mean, we've had a couple of days where we had to get up the next morning and smile and act like we got to figure this out and we'll be okay. And, and inside you're, just, but I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I think sometimes the games are the fun, but they're also not. I think it's kind of how it started with me sitting by myself. That piece of it was part of why that happened, was because the stress was high, and it is a job. It's a job. At the end of the day, we're doing a job, and it's going to be publicly graded. So,
What do you mean you sit by yourself? Where do you sit?
I mean, I sit by myself. I'm not anymore. This past year, I'm having to kind of sit with a couple people. But last weekend, I sat, you will find this amusing, under the bleachers in a chair, and the security guard was letting me know when we had scored. I couldn't watch. It was the first quarter and a half were really stressful. The first half was pretty stressful. And I kind of have a number of us separating ourselves, but if it's too tight, I just can't. And I don't want to be seen watching it because it becomes this thing.
People watch you watch it. Yeah. They're waiting for your expressions.
They wait for you to have a response. It becomes that thing of, I usually try to sit by myself somewhere.
Yeah, I get that. There were twice Texas Oklahoma games. I sat on the bus the whole time and watched it on the TV on the bus. Yeah. Because I didn't want people watching me.
I feel you. SEC championship, I was sitting in the concourse in a little back piece. Somebody caught a picture of it, but it was kind of an area where it was kind of reserved the back side of it. And I was watching on a screen, sitting on the concrete floor with my back up against the wall. And people walking through, and I mean, we won big, but it didn't matter. It was still stressful. It's still stressful. It's hard to be out in the crowd, and
No, I'm with you.
This week there was not a lot of option, so what it ended up being was under the bleachers in just a plastic chair, and the whole band. It was funny because the band had stored some of their drums and things up underneath there, and I turn around and there's 2 or 3 of them, and they're changing and I'm like, okay, it's like I'm in the band locker room. Yeah. You never know what you're going to get when you travel in this high. Everybody think, oh, it's so cool. I bet you're really having fun. Yeah, it's great. And my little guy was telling me, you scored again. It's okay. Thank you. So that was my week last week. So anyway, I really appreciate you doing this. And I feel like you probably don't realize how important you are to so many coaches' wives around the nation. I mean, truly, you do it with a class and with kindness, and it doesn't matter, what level, because the Sally Brown I met when we were a high school coach is still the same Sally Brown that I deal with today. And I love that. I love that about you. And
very, very kind of you.
We love you dearly, both of you, and I think y'all are just 2 of the best. And I do appreciate you giving me some time. So
it's always fun to be with you, Kristi, and send our love to guests.
All right, will do. Talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.